Cool. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and those that are going to be watching this later as well. This is our Gridiron Survivor project group. We call them pods. So basically, I have a Discord group, and there's a bunch of developers in there. And I've noticed that there's just some developers in there trying to career switch or trying to find a job, and they're just stuck in between, like finding a project or something to do to fill in or to gain some experience. So I thought, well, why not create a project for these individuals to start building something while using a corporate process, while planning things out, while getting direction from a senior engineer or a couple of them, as well as getting code reviews and all of that, right? So going through the full motion of a process with as if they were at a company, because that's one of the hardest things to do is to onboard an individual that has no experience. That process itself takes a lot of time to figure out, to fail, and to do all that stuff. So instead of doing that on the job, doing this before you get it, you're going to be able to learn. I'm going to be critical, but at the same time also teach you, things that these individuals may not be doing well, so they can improve on it. So, what is Gridiron Survivor? Well, actually, first, what's the agenda? I'm going to talk about what the project is because it's our first time streaming about the project, and then I'm going to go to thank our sponsors, and then after that, we have 3 presentations to go through. It's going to be about web accessibility, Linting, and Prettier. And at the end of that, we're just going to hash out anything we have to discuss about the project. So first off, what is Gridiron Survivor? This is a project based on my friend Rudy. I play a NFL Survivor pool with him, and he had this spreadsheet that he was tracking manually. And I mean, like, he would have to email us and text us every week to get our submissions in. So the whole deal is you have 32 teams to choose from, but you only have a certain amount of games to choose from. If I choose the Green Bay Packers their first week, the second week, I cannot choose them anymore because I already chose them. But at the same time, if they lose that week, my entry is gone, right? I lose the whole thing. But if I keep going, let's say I pick 10 teams and I get to the 11th week, on that 11th week, I cannot choose any of the previous 10. And so Rudy had his spreadsheet where he was just manually tracking everything. And I don't know how he did it because that's a lot of work. It was, I think it was several, maybe 100, 200 entries and several people, right? Like I could do 5 entries. So it must have been 100 people or more. And by manually doing that process, as you can see, it's a lot of work. So I'd say, hey, I have a development Discord. If I created a project and built this for you, would that be something that is valuable for you? And he said, yeah, cool. And I said, yeah, we'll do it for, just for the experience. And as while we're building this, we'll create something awesome for these individuals. And my whole goal with this is to allow these individuals that are on this team to build some experience working for a real client, working for with the legit process, and learning along the way. So that's why we're doing these live streams now. We were doing them privately, but we switched to doing live stream because we want the public to know. We want these individuals to get publicity. We want people to really understand what they bring to the table. It allows you to interview them without being able to like directly interview them. So hopefully this gives them an opportunity to kind of present what they have, also showcase what we're building, because all this stuff that we're going to do is going to be beneficial to any company. So the next thing I wanted to do is just ask if anybody else wanted to speak about the project and how they've enjoyed it so far.
I'll jump in real quick, just if you like.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so everyone, I'm Ryan. I'm a UX engineer on the project. Looking forward to jumping in, but Shashi reached out, and it's just so organized and a really good opportunity for those of us like me looking to get into the field. So just seeing the structure behind it is something that not going to school, not being in a boot camp, this structure is really offering a lot to me. So I'm stoked about it. Our tech stack is modern and fresh, and using some great tools along the way.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Ryan. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll go.
You don't have to you don't have to say anything if you don't want to. It's totally optional.
No, I mean, I
Go ahead, Chris.
agree. I agree with Ryan. I mean, my name's Chris, aka Tyler, or I am Wix on Twitter. Um, I'm one of the backend engineers that's going to be working on the project. Shashi reached out to me, and what I love about this is, one, Shashi, just thank you just for what you're doing for the community. I know that we are amongst a bunch of people who you're trying to help and have helped. So thank you for this opportunity, one. But two, I think it's an opportunity for all of us, not just to be in another project app that we're building, but to actually see how this works and get that real world experience. I'm going to be in my silo of back end. I might need to help on the front end if needed, whatever. But really, that whole process of passing from team to team and communicating and getting all working, that's what I'm really stoked about in this project. And then you picked a great bunch of people. So again, thank you for what you're doing for the community and this project idea.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing, Chris.
I'll jump in too, and I'll just mirror what Chris said. And I'm Jason, everybody. I'm working on the front end team. Shashi, big thanks to you, man. I feel like for a lot of us coming into the industry, this is that one component that we kind of miss having, going through boot camps and cohorts of these like real life simulation atmospheres. I think it's really going to kind of round off a lot of the technical side that we already have. It's this team environment that I think a lot of us can benefit from. So I'm looking forward to that as well. So thank you again for including me.
Thanks for wanting to join this. Jason's one that actually reached out that wanted to join. And when we had an opening, I was like, I got to get Jason on this project. So thank you, Jason, for being a part of this. Cool. The next thing I wanted to do was move on to thanking our sponsors. We do have 3 sponsors. The first one is Pastel. Ryan, can you do the favor of telling us what Pastel is and what they offer?
Yeah, thanks, Shashi. So Pastel, it's a service that actually Shashi just used and he uses in his Friday portfolio reviews. It's a service that basically lets you create a canvas of any website that you visit. And it's great because you can provide visual feedback, comments on everything. And that's exactly what Shashi did. Oh, I like this. I would recommend doing this differently. So you can create comments, you can include images, you can even create tasks and export them to different tools like Trello and Asana. So it's got that tight integration with popularly used tools across the industry. And I'm impressed with it just off of my first experience and looking forward to using it in the future because it's going to help a lot when we can't all get on a call at the same time. I think that's the biggest feature of it is that while you can comment at the same time and have that sort of like synchronous feedback, it's really good for people that are on different schedules and stuff. So thank you, Pastel.
Thanks for that, Ryan. And then our next one is Friend and Mentor. Chris, can you tell us a little bit about Friend and Mentor?
Yeah, friendandmentor.io is actually what got me really excited about jumping into web dev 2 years ago. I was kind of looking out there trying to figure out, man, what is the web development like now since I hadn't touched it since college in the early 2000s. Not going to date myself there. But yeah, so I did friendandmentor.io is a platform where they offer you coding challenges. They provide you a design. They go, hey, go and make this however you want, use whatever stack you want, whatever plugins you want, but just make it. They have a free version so that anyone can take advantage of it. They have a pro version where they provide some of them provide Figma files and I think another design file that you use. And then at the very end, you post your solution on GitHub. You link your GitHub to that, and then it actually analyzes your design to see how close to the original it was. And my favorite thing is they give you the ability to do whatever you want to do. If your tech stack is, Django with Python, or if you're a React stack or whatever it is, Laravel stack, doesn't matter. They don't care. Just it gives you opportunities. So if you're short on a project idea and you're looking for something to do, go to Front End Mentor. They have a bunch of options from beginner to guru. I think I've done one of the intermediate or senior ones. I did the in-browser markdown editor, and tied it in with MongoDB, did Next.js, and got it all deployed on Vercel. So great opportunity if you're looking to learn and practice. And yeah, thank you, Front End Mentor, for being a sponsor. We really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Chris. And our last one is AppWrite. Jason, can you be our hero and explain to us what AppWrite is?
Of course I can, Shashi. So AppWrite, which I think everybody on the team can share my sentiment, we're all excited to use, is an open sourced back end as a service platform. And that's going to allow us to sort of streamline building user logins, our databases, file storage. One of the things that I use on a lot of my projects are the real-time features like chat, instant updates. It provides a lot of these functionalities, which kind of let us focus a lot more on like the UI, the UX side, the front end. I know Chris had expressed his interest in really building it out. I like that they're super community focused. They just updated, which I don't know if any of you guys did hear that 1.5 did release today officially. So we are able to use the server-side rendering and all of the new features that come with that. I think it's going to be huge for our build, and I'm looking forward to seeing it all play out. So thank you to them and thank you to the team.
That's awesome that they officially launched 1.5. We are very excited to use all of these services in one fashion or another. So the next thing that we are going to jump into are our presentations. We have 3 presentations. How the format's going to go is individuals are going to go first, and then after they're done on our team, if we have any questions or want to go through some certain topics, we can ask them. I am not going to take any of the audience questions because I know that we're learning these things and we're not experts in them. I may be more than that, but I know this is for you guys to present with your research, and it's not to grind you on that stuff. But I would tell you, I might grind you. I think Carlos and Richard and mine knows that too, is that if you miss something, I will grind you. And that way you get used to it. Treat it like kind of like an interview where if I ask you certain technology, I know you may not know it, but just be honest and we'll go forward with that. So we have 3 presentations. The first one is Corina for web accessibility. The second one is Chris Nowicki. No, so sorry. I mean, Tyler. So easy. Tyler. I'm going to go second for Linting. And then Ryan is going to present about Prettier. So we will start with Corina. There we go. I can hear you move your mouse, Corina. I cannot hear you though if you're trying to speak.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Oh yes, there we go.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, I'm trying actually to get into full screen, and I now that I'm sharing, I can't do that anymore. So
You
should I
click
stop?
on the start from beginning on the far left?
I know,
That should start it up.
but it doesn't seem to respond to. Let me see.
I wonder, do you have 2 monitors or just one?
Today, I don't even have my computer. No, sorry about that. I know. So
That's
normally,
okay.
is it
Do you have any transitions? Because if you don't, this works just fine too.
okay? No, actually. So yeah, let's
Okay.
do that.
Yeah, because I think we can see just fine.
Okay.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, let's see if it's yeah, the problem is that it's not responding to my keyboard at all.
I think there's a button on the bottom right for presenting full screen.
Is it that icon?
Next
One
to
of those icons.
Zoom.
Yeah, I think it might be that one.
Corina,
On the bottom
can you
right, on the
move
bottom
to-
right, with the slidey input.
Present.
Okay.
I'm going to start from the beginning.
Yep, no problem.
Okay.
Nothing like doing this live and having some technical issues. That's
Oh, I've
legit.
had technical issues all day. It's kind of like,
Always, but that's okay. That's how we.
It's legit.
is
That
it?
shows that this is real. This is we
Sure.
didn't practice this all day long. No.
This is not a simulation.
You didn't
This
rehearse
is
yours
not
in the mirror? I mean, come on.
Okay. Can you see my screen now?
I'm pulling it up right now.
There
Here
it
we go.
is. Yep.
There it is.
Okay, it's full screen. Okay, let's see now if the enter key works. Okay. Okay. Oh, let me actually introduce myself. I didn't before because I knew I was presenting first. So my name is Karina. I'm a self-taught front-end developer. And for the past few months, I've become really interested in accessibility. So I really, dug deep into the documentation. And if you don't know, the accessibility documentation is probably the most cryptic out there. I got my trusted tester certification recently, and I'm very grateful to Shashi because right after that I was thinking, what am I going to work on? How am I going to put my newfound skills to use? So now I'm the accessibility specialist on our Gridiron project. So for today, there's tons of things to share about accessibility, both in general and specific to our project. So I kind of thought that maybe talking a little bit about what accessibility is, why do we have to talk about accessibility and how it's working behind the scene, that would be useful. But then also zoom into the guidelines, the structure, and actually focus on WCAG 2.2, which is our ultimate goal for the project. There are 86 success criteria for accessibility, so there's no way I was going to cover them today, even though Shashi said that I can take as much time as possible, but I assume he didn't mean till like tomorrow morning. So
You can take as much time as you want.
well, that's what you said, and I thought, okay, I'm happy to do it, but no. What is accessibility? So in the context of our project and in the context of web development in general, we have to design and build such that everyone, including people with disabilities, can interact and understand our product. So that's the ultimate goal of accessibility. And we have to understand and we have to build in such a way that everyone can access the web or in our product given the abilities that they have, and not to exclude them because they have disabilities. Now, there's two people, you can divide people who know about accessibility into two groups when it comes to justifying the need for accessibility. It's the business side and it's the human rights side, okay? So as long as we pick one side, we are fine. I think that we should consider both. And maybe actually start and prioritize the human aspect. Because when we prioritize the human aspect, we might go beyond what the law or the guidelines are requiring. So we all use the web every day. And it's not just a form of entertainment now. It's like we bank through we do our banking through the web, for the internet. We order stuff online. We have doctor appointments. So it's become almost like a necessity. And it's even more important for people with disabilities because, yes, it's very convenient that I meet with my doctor online. I've done it so many times since the pandemic. It's very convenient to order groceries and clothes and so on. But at the end of the day, push come to shove, I can get in my car and just get whatever I want. It's not the same for a person with disability. And the same, let's say the same impairment that might prevent somebody from using a mouse might be apart from a larger disability that prevents them from getting to a store or getting to an office or getting to a bank easily. So,
Hey, Karina, can I ask
yes.
you, are you moving through the slides right now?
No.
Okay, so you're still stuck on the first slide,
I'm
correct?
still, yeah, I'm stuck.
Okay. We
Yeah,
thought you
yeah.
were going through it and we were all asking each other, like, hey, is the slides frozen or not? Okay,
No,
sorry.
no.
Okay, keep going.
Yeah, so provide an accessible web. We provide freedom, we provide privacy, and we can help remove challenges associated with people impairments. The other side that I mentioned is the business side. Improve the SEO. So when designing with accessibility in mind, a lot of those features have like what we like to call like positive spillover effect. So improves the SEO. Like let's say one of the best practices for accessibility is that we should be using heading tags. So the content on the page should be divided into sections, and each section should have a heading that explains or it's meaningful given the content of that section. And we know that crawlers, for SEO purposes, we know that they're looking at headings. So doing something good for accessibility does something good for the overall purpose of our website. There's increased market share for certain apps and websites because there's millions of people with disabilities. And in general, it just creates a better overall user experience. When you're thinking of improving a person with disabilities experience, because you're going to have clear navigation, maybe easy to read fonts, and some of these are in the guidelines that we have to follow. Everyone's experience with your site, with your app is much better. What has become a point of interest when talking about the business side is the legal consequences. What you see right now, these are like digital accessibility lawsuits in the US for the past several years. Look at 2015, it was 0 before 2015. And last year we had over 4,000 lawsuits related to digital accessibility. Mostly firms with revenues below $25 million, partly because the big firms have already been sued and they had to comply. And the majority of lawsuits are in New York, 75. So over 2,000, actually that would be 3,000, 75% are in New York because New York has the judges that will accept digital accessibility laws. And why do I say the judges? Because we don't have a digital accessibility law in the United States. We have the ADA Act from 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is at federal level. But in 1990, we weren't talking about the internet, at least not in the way we talk about now. And lawyers can use Title III of the ADA, and the part that says that any place of public accommodation should not discriminate against people with disabilities. So in some states, you can use that piece of the legislation and make a case to sue a website that it's inaccessible. You can definitely do that in New York. Some cases are also in California and Florida, but it's hit or miss because there's the famous case of a blind person who sued, what's the name of the pizza place? I'm forgetting right now. Domino's. So they sued Domino's because they're trying to order pizza online and pick it up in the store. And the first try, the judge said, no, this is not an ADA related lawsuit because if you're trying to order online, that's not a place of public accommodation. So the plaintiff lost, but then they won an appeal, and the judge said, actually no, because you're trying to order and then pick it up in the store, so the website should have been accessible. And this is a lawsuit that dragged over like 3 or 4 years. In the end, Domino's had to pay the plaintiff, which is $4,000 according to, this was based on California Unruh Act, which is similar to ADA, but allows for the plaintiff to get money if they win the lawsuit, and Domino's had to pay the lawyer's fees. again, at the end of the day, it's up to everyone which side of this argument they want to pick. Is it the human right? Is the business side? I think we should go with the human side, but also not forget the business side of having or not having an accessible product. And the most important thing we should remember is that we should not separate usability and accessibility. One of the first things I learned as a front-end developer was that, once you create your site, make sure it works on both desktop and mobile, because that improves user experience. And that's something we can relate to, yes, because most of us use both the desktop, even a tablet and your phone. And having an inaccessible site should be part of the overall thinking about user experience. People interact with the web through different senses. Not everybody is a sighted mouse user. Some people have low vision and they have to rely on a screen reader. Some people have mobility issues. So, actually in the next section, I'm going to go over certain disabilities that some involve using assistive technologies, others not, that we should have in the back of our minds as we're building and think about the user experience for given user with a specific impairment. So I know if you have user with vision impairment, often just dark mode is enough to improve their experience. Should not be exclusively dark mode. I know that this is a trend nowadays. The majority of users are still better off with light mode. If I remember correctly, the stats, they're over like 50%. It's an enormous eye strain for somebody, for most people, to read something that's exclusive dark mode. For other users, just a good color contrast is going to be enough. In our case, we're going to have to decide, are we going to go with the minimum standard? Or are we going to shoot for the AAA standard? I'm going to explain that a little bit later in terms of how conformant we want to be with the guidelines that requires a certain color contrast. People with low vision have a hard time distinguishing text from the background if the contrast between the two colors, between the brightness of the two colors is not strong enough. We could have users with reduced hand mobility. It's really hard to use the mouse because we might not be thinking about this, but you need high precision when you're using them and very nuanced mobility in our hands to use the mouse. So we'll have to make sure that every component we create, every interactive element can be accessed and interacted with the keyboard. For our user with more severe disabilities, this is where they will be using assistive technologies. These are like hardware and software that helps them interact with the web page. In case of low vision or blindness, they could use a screen reader, either with a speech synthesizer. In this case, they navigate through the UI with the keyboard, and then the screen reader announces what's on the page. If the user also has low hearing or the user is deaf, then they will be using a braille display. This is when the screen reader sends the information that's presented on the screen to a braille display, and the braille display, it's kind of attached to the keyboard. Sometimes some are built in with a keyboard, and it has little pins that move up and down dynamically, and then the text that's displayed in braille characters also changes one line at a time. Some people could maybe it's not complete blindness, it's low vision, then they could use a screen magnifier that's zooms in and also offer other features in terms of color contrast. We could have users with very limited or no hand mobility. People who have no arms or hands, they're paralyzed from neck down, they can use speech recognition software that allows, this is software that allows for voice commands. They talk to the computer. We have to be very mindful when we create labels and names for our interactive elements, because especially when there's no visible text, if I have a button that instead of a link, let's say, that instead of using visible text uses an icon, this voice user has to interact with that link, and it has to guess what the name of that link is going to be. You could also have user with eye tracking systems. So this is a device and a software that allows mouse control through eye movement. So there's a wide range of users of the internet, and when building our app, and when building a project on the web in general, we need to be mindful of their needs and the way they interact with the web. Shashi, I think you said that the questions are going to be at the end, or do you want me to pause and ask if there are any questions?
Yeah, you can pause anytime. It is up to you on how you want to present. Like, I know I do have some questions already. But...
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to pause. I mean, because this I'm kind of like moving into a different section.
Okay.
So yeah, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Awesome. I will ask our team first if anybody has any questions before I ask my questions.
I have one. And I know you touched on a lot of this, but as far as like direct impact to our project, what things are we focusing on the front end for the user as far as experience wise?
I'm going to get a little bit more into it. That's anything that we every component that we build, every interactive element that we build has to be keyboard accessible. I'm assuming, and because it's I don't see this anymore. I rarely see that that we'll be using semantic HTML. So by default, certain functionality is going to already be available given the tags, the HTML tags that we are using. We're going to be again, I'm going to be touching this a little bit more in depth later. We're going to have a login system. We're going to have user input. Everything has to have a name. By name, like, so if you have a button that says close form, that's the name of the button. That's how that button is going to be announced, let's say, to the screen reader user. That's how the voice user is going to interact with it, because the voice user is going to say, click close form. But sometimes we might decide not to add the name, often for design purposes. So we're going to have to be very careful how we choose them, because we're still going to have to give a name to the button and the link that maybe it's using an icon or an image. So we're going to have to very carefully think about it. What's the name that makes most sense and it's going to be intuitive for the user? I don't know who was it. Was it Jason who asked the question?
Yeah, that was me.
Jason, were you also thinking in terms of what our typical user is going to be? So maybe certain, how should I say, impairments are not going to be specific to our group of users?
I mean, I'm sure there's a target demographic that would use the app, but I don't think that was my initial question. I just, knowing what we're building, I think that there's probably certain aspects that we could focus on right off the jump, just to make sure we're building it out in an accessible fashion. I just didn't know if you had like a punch list of specific things already kind of focused on, because this is my first time building anything that's really, accessibility centric. So I'm just kind of understanding what the process is for that.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, you're right. Actually, maybe I could have organized this a little bit more, um, kind of like I thought they would be implied. So, we definitely we need to be concerned with, providing a dark mode feature. We need good color contrast. So these are things that are typical, honestly, to with every site and every application. What I'm not going in depth into right now for this presentation is, actually, no, I am a little bit, but not too much into code. If these are the examples that you're looking for, is that what you're thinking, Jason, about?
No, not code
No.
specific. I think that you sort of answered it. I think also based on the fact that we don't really have any sort of like UI fleshed out as far as like some of the elements we're going to have. Maybe some of those questions aren't like necessarily able to be answered right now. I just didn't know, again, having never done it, if there were certain things that are like super focused as first steps to building in an accessible fashion. So
Yeah, I think,
Yeah,
Jason, I can kind of answer that too, because we are using Shad CN as our UI component library as the base. It has some accessibility built in already.
yeah.
So the good news is that a majority of our accessibility pitfalls are going to be covered already. But because we're going to try to push the boundaries to WCAG 2.2, that's where we will push the boundaries a little bit more and be an understanding. And based on the designs that I've seen, it's our designs are not going to be super complex, right? It's just a pretty basic or common like form and display and all that stuff. I think what's the issue is going to come is when we combine these components and are we doing it correctly? Are we, like Corina was saying, are we naming these things properly? Are we structuring our layout correctly according to accessibility needs and all of that? And are we actually testing it so that it actually works from the keyboard, from voice command, like all these other things, right? So that's where the construction of our pages and components will be key.
I love that, and I'm so glad we're using Shed CN. A big fan of that, so that'll help us right out of the gate.
I don't even know how to say that UI correctly.
Does anybody really know how to say that? It's like
Shad,
No,
Shad,
just make it up.
I always thought it was Shad.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think I like your question, Jason, and that's a good point, Shashi. The fact that there's a lot of accessibility in there, we just need to make sure that we cover a lot of that in certain areas, that we're using the right ARIA labels, that, there's a lot of cool form components using React Hook Form that Chad CN has that include a lot of that information, to where even if you don't have a label, you can hide the, anyway, I'm sure she's going to get into it, but this has been really educational from the legal stance side. I mean, I never really thought about this from a legal impact, right? I didn't. Like, I have a lot of friends that I know that are that I've met through the interwebs that are all very passionate about accessibility. Just did an accessibility audit on my own site, and but thinking about it from that legal perspective, especially when we're getting into stuff like this in a group, in a court, thinking we're running this like our own little corporation, right? That's it's a whole different side I didn't think about. So that kind of opened up my eyes, Karina. Thank you.
Yeah, that's something actually that I have experience with. I used to work at a company that created websites for restaurants, and one of our clients was getting sued because of the lack of accessibility on their site. I was not a developer there, so it wasn't my doing. But that's why you see a lot of sites with the sort of like the accessibility widget, which I don't really love. I don't think it's a great experience, but it exists to try to tick those boxes, I guess.
Was this Ryan talking?
That's
I'm sorry,
me.
because I was actually debating whether I should include that or not.
Mhm.
From those like 4,000 lawsuits last year, almost 1,000 were against sites or that had that widget, the overlay. And I'm happy to talk about that at any point, because what those do is actually they expose to the user features that are already available via the operating system or the browser. But maybe the less savvy user, doesn't know this. So it's so much easy to see that button. You click on the button, it opens a menu, and you see big letters, colorful, enlarged text, versus going behind the scene in your operating system, and you can do that as well, or even like click in the browser and you zoom in. But they're not going to make a site that's not accessible. It's not going to become accessible because of that widget. I was testing one the other day and had a lot of animation. I have motion sickness, so I have animation turned off on my computer, but the animation is not going to be paused unless there's also specific code. Usually I use CSS, like prefers reduced motion. If that's not in the code, the animation is not going to stop for me. And I click on the button to stop animation and it didn't stop. So that told me that the actual code was not accessible, and the widget cannot make it accessible.
Yeah, that's good that you brought that up, because that's one thing. As far as widgets, it's finite. They don't cover some of those things. It's built to a certain amount of accessibility features, not all of them. We just fixed animation on our Tech Commute page as well, because our logo bounces, and that was one of the first things someone pointed out to us. So we did amend that through the open source contributions, which were super helpful. So great points.
And the biggest problem with widgets is that, as you said, that they fix some issues, or they make some features easier available to the user, but they really interfere with screen reader users. And then that's why most of the lawsuits against them. And there's a big war between these companies, the companies that provide us widgets, they're called Overlay, and the accessibility experts. And there's lawsuits, and a company in France they lost because they accused an Overlay company of providing, under the guise of accessibility, an inaccessible service, and they actually lost like 26,000 euros. And so it's a really controversial topic in accessibility.
I guess my question for this is, how do we stay on top of that? How are we going to ensure that we don't fall into that pitfall? I know our project's going to be small and it's not going to matter, but pretend like we do matter, right? Like we have millions of users. Like, how do we stay on top of that?
So are you saying, like, how do we make sure that our end product is accessible? Is that the question?
That is correct. That it meets the standards, that if an auditor comes to our site and they try to audit us, that we meet the standards.
Okay. I do have I have a slide right at the end, no, that's okay. I'm happy to talk about it. It's, you test as you build. First of all, actually, I shouldn't say that, but I haven't been involved in that design process. But it starts from the design process, and I know there are tools in Figma and Adobe that allow you to, as you're designing, to check certain things. Obviously, color contrast, sizes, because there's rules also about the size of a let's say of a button, of an interactive element. So we plan with accessibility in mind. So we design with accessibility in mind, and we test as we build. And that's why my thinking about, and the reason I'm focusing on certain things is that if every developer knows how it works, and as they're building, as they may be writing a function and putting two components together, they wouldn't have to wait, whether for our project or anywhere else. Yes, you can wait for the accessibility specialist to test what you just created, but there's, at every step you can test yourself. At the minimum, you tab to see, is it working with the keyboard. There's automated tools, there are browser extensions that we should be using nonstop as we're building. Like we run those, they guarantee you maybe up to 50%, but as the site is going to be more complex, especially that we're going to have forms and login, an automated tool cannot test for that, but it's still going to test for things that are very specific. Like, do we have the title? Do we have the lang attribute? Do we have headings in the right order? Again, I'm going to touch on these things a little bit later. So automated tools, design automated tools. What I'm recommending, I know we're going to be using Playwright for end-to-end testing.
Yep.
You can use Playwright for accessibility. You can call on the, I don't know if there's more than one libraries. I'm familiar with the AXI, which is DQ's accessibility library. So on latest projects I've been working for myself, every time I push something to GitHub, I receive a Playwright report, and it tells me if I forgot to check anything. Maybe I forgot I wanted to change the color contrast, and I just forgot to, or I wanted to change a color, all of a sudden, and I forgot to check the contrast. Playwright is going to tell me that, hey, this is not working. It's going to send me, if anyone who's worked with Playwright before, I'm sure any E2E testing library probably is very similar. Like, it gives you a report, and you can integrate it with your GitHub Actions. So it's kind of keeping on our toes, because it's going to tell us if we fail at something. Again, not everything.
Yeah. No, that's good.
And then-
So I just wanted to check again. Are you moving your slides? Because on my end, it's still stuck on the first one.
Oh, I am moving my slides.
Okay, it is stuck.
Is this for everyone?
Yeah, it's been stuck for a while, and yeah, I think it's stuck. Yeah, everybody's nodding yes.
Oh, okay. No, because you asked me in the beginning, and I had.
No problem. Because you said, "Oh, it's one of my last slides," and I was like, "You're still on the first one."
No. Oh goodness. So what am I doing wrong? It's like right now I'm tabbing through it and I'm moving through pages.
I'm guessing. So you only are you on a laptop or just one monitor? You don't have a secondary monitor, correct?
No.
There you go. Wait, I saw it now. You're on 11. Okay, I can see you now.
Oh, so all I did now, I'm not in presentation mode anymore.
Yeah, stay out of presentation
Yeah,
mode. Yeah,
don't do that anymore. This is great.
Oh, so you guys haven't seen you haven't seen anything I showed you?
We thought, because you told us you were still on the first slide, so we were like, I think she's on the first slide.
No!
Oh, Karina, no.
It won't go to waste.
It's okay.
Okay, so I'm actually just since from the beginning, I'm just gonna show you that I have more than one slide. Okay. So are you seeing slide 4 now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. You're seeing 5. This one, the one I was referring to when I was talking about the lawsuits.
Got it. Makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, visually I can see it, but with the representation of the image, it helps. I think your presentation somehow is stuck, and we just saw a frozen screen, but now we can see you. So go ahead. Keep going.
So you're seeing slide 6, right? Accessibility, yes?
Yes.
I think I'm just going to check now with every slide.
No. We can see it now. We can see you moving everything. Yeah.
Okay,
just stay out of presentation mode.
We'll tell you if it stops moving now that we know that you're moving it. We'll let you know.
Okay. So I'm going to go. Oh, well, I mean, I had to fail at everything today. How accessibility works. Maybe this is actually, it's good that we finally figured out, because, again, I had to, I was debating whether I should share this or not, go more into specific, but my hope is that not because I don't want to do my job. And actually, let me just answer Shashi's question, when you said, how do we know at the end? Like, at the end, right at the end, after we tested all the time and everything, something is added to the project, I will be testing using both automated tools and manual testing. At the end, I will do an audit, top to bottom. going through all the 80, there's 86 success criteria. And I'm going to explain that. It's basically like, these are the little metrics that tell you that you have to go through each and every single one of them, and you check it for the site. And you have there's a document that where you check things off. Is it compliant or not? So I think, we're going to use a combination of methods and tools, and hopefully we can also do user testing. If we know somebody to, a person who using a screen reader, because that's ultimately, that's what we, sites that really care about accessibility do.
Yeah, I think with this project, I want to keep it creative and open to what y'all want to do. Obviously, we are going to have like a roadmap and understand that, whatever we need to fit in within the phases, then we can do that. But as we move forward with future phases and stuff like that, as long as it's inside the planned roadmap or we have available time for it, we can do it. Because I want you to be excited about this project. I want you to gain something out of this, right? And if it's user testing, focus groups, or whatever we want to do, as long as we have availability and we can find the resources for that, we should definitely do it, because that experience, not just for you, but for everyone else, is going to be very beneficial to understand and to go through that process.
Okay. So, how accessibility works? I didn't know what to assume, and everybody else in the team knows how. And so, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about this. It's the work between what we call the accessibility tree, accessibility APIs, and assistive technologies. Okay, so at render, we know that the browser builds a DOM. It also builds the accessibility tree. I like to call it like the DOM's little brother. But it only has the nodes from the DOM, only the nodes, only the object, the elements that have to be exposed to the assistive technologies. So for example, I'm a screen reader user. I tab through the page, I get to a button. I need to know, that is a button, and I need to know what it's doing, usually through its name. That's going to let me know if I trigger the action on the button, what's going to happen. Okay, so this is an element, the button is an element that has to be exposed to the assistive technology. And it's being exposed by the API. Every browser has there's a number of accessibility APIs. Okay, so they play the in-between with the accessibility tree and the assistive tech. But if I have a div, let's say my entire page is containing a div purely for style purposes, that's not going to show up in the accessibility tree. It's actually going to be a line there it's going to say ignored. Okay, so this is can you see my page 12?
Yep.
Okay, so this is like a very simplified comparison between a DOM tree with containing a nav element and the accessibility tree. Okay, so in the DOM tree, I'm going to see the nav containing a list. I'm only using like one example here with one item. This is being mapped, and in the accessibility tree, but not by tags or elements anymore, but by roles. So the nav has the role of navigation. The UL is going to show up as the list. The LI is a list item. So if I'm a screen reader user, if I tap to the home link, I'm going to hear navigation landmark, okay? Because that's one portion, that's one region of the page. List with, 3-4 items. And then it's going to focus on the link, and it's going to say home link. So
this is amazing. I have never seen it articulated like this. And also, Karina, how come nobody has hired you yet? Your knowledge of accessibility is so deep.
thank you, Sashi.
Very good.
I am. I don't know actually. Well, it's been only a few months. Okay, and honestly, I haven't even applied for any accessibility jobs.
Well, I think you're blowing us all away, and you're doing a great job.
Thank you, thank you. This is something I'll say that I started with Playwright a few months ago. Because I wanted to learn about testing and just kind of also learn what else I can do with accessibility testing. And I was having a hard time, because I had to learn Playwright, which is actually very easy syntax. But I was getting all these errors, and they link you to the documentation, and it's really, really cryptic. It's really hard to understand. So I told myself, like, if I don't understand the documentation, if I don't understand what this is saying, I'm not going to get anywhere. So I spent a couple of months just auditing sites, knowing I'm going to find bugs. And then usually when you use these automated tools that are browser extensions, they say, the title element is missing, and they link you to the documentation. And eventually you just get used to the language and you know what it means. And just so some of you, actually, I met with some of you and I audited your portfolios, and just learned how to kind of explain this and talk about this. Now, I wish actually it took a screenshot of how you access this, because I really would love everyone from the team to know how to access this. So when you go, and I might just send something later, like tomorrow to everyone and post it in the documentation that's in Google Docs. I'm showing you to you side by side, but in DevTools you toggle. So you get the DOM tree. There's a little accessibility icon. If you click on it, it's going to show you the accessibility tree. And the cool thing about it is that if I click on the nav, let's say the opening tag of the nav, or maybe an LI, and then I toggle, it's going to show me the accessibility mapping of that particular element. And that's really good for debugging, because maybe you're tabbing, or maybe you're listening to the screen reader and you notice that it's skipping an element that shouldn't be skipped. It should be in focus because it's a link or a button. So then you know where to look. You see, okay, you see that, oh, this button is ignored in the accessibility tree. Shouldn't be ignored. Let me click on the accessibility toggle. That's going to bring you to the DOM, and maybe you're noticing something. Oh, I put display nonce or whatever for this button, and that's why the screen reader is not mentioning it. Okay, so it's really good. And I'm showing you. I've been using Chrome. I've been really partial to Chrome for a long time. Everybody's been saying that Firefox is much better, and Firefox, it is much better. I'm slowly switching. So Firefox is giving you much, much more information. Anyway, but I do want to bring your attention to a few things here. So notice, look at the link element. So that's an interactive element. I know I'm learning about its role. So the A tag maps to a link role. I see its name, its home, and I'm seeing some properties and states. Focusable is a property, it's focused, the home link, so that's the state. And I'm getting all that just because I used semantic HTML. And that's being shown in the accessibility tree. And you could also, when you're in DevTools, there's also like a panel at the bottom that's going to give you much more information. And it's really important because, especially for screen reader user, they need this. They all this information is going to be announced to them, and so they know where they're on the page. They know they know that if this is the link, they can click on it, and it's it's the home link. Let me see.
I have a quick question for you.
Yes.
Okay. I love this approach. I've never seen it like this either. How does this work with, let's say, all right, in this example, right, we have a link that's nested in a list, right? What happens when you link not a button, but like another object in there that could be focusable? Do the readers get confused? Like, how do you, maybe this is another slide and a topic for another time. I'm just curious what happens when you start nesting objects, and how the accessibility tree sees those objects when it looks at the accessibility point.
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question. So if I'm putting something else inside the link, you mean that inside the same, inside the same list element?
Yeah, let's say inside a list element that there's a couple focusable items. How do you control? Is there a way to make sure that only the main item that's needed is focusable? Is kind of the question that I have.
Yeah. So in terms of like the user, there's only one that's focused at the time, if that makes sense. So there's only one is going to be announced at a time. You can't have two. You can have like, and I should have like, I didn't want to like crowd the page too much, because if I had another, let's say I have a contact item link, yes, it's always going to say link contact, that's the name, focusable true, and it's not going to say focus true. It's actually not going to say anything. If I was in a different computer, I could actually demonstrate this live. It's as I'm tabbing from the home to the contact, the focus true on the home is going to disappear, and it's going to appear to in line with the contact link. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You said that again. You know so much. This is insane. Thank you. That's a really great answer to the question. I really appreciate it. I'm blown away by what you know.
Blown away.
Okay. You'll tell me at the end if this is getting too technical. I really want that everyone understands what's going on, and you can debug on your own. Again, not because I don't want to, debug myself, but I think it's just something that every front-end developer should know. When it comes, and since I spend so much time kind of like deciphering the documentation, I want to share what I learned. Okay, so using semantic HTML, and I'll explain what that means. You get a lot of the functionality that we expect for free. But the fact that I use nav tags, and now see it as a navigation. I could use a div that's not semantic anymore, but I'm going to have to rely on ARIA, accessible rich internet applications. Okay, so I'm going to say div role equals navigation, and that's actually the reason the ARIA attributes were created. Before HTML5, a lot of the functionality that we wanted in a website was not there. Okay, so then you use the div and you assign a role to it. You can create a button. You can create the main section of a web page. You have the footer. There's the term div soup. It's everything is a div, and I know that our app it's not going to be like that, but we still have to learn how to use ARIA, because it's not just to modify behavior. Sometimes it's also about improving default behavior. Like if I'm using a button and I want that button to open and collapse a menu, okay, that's not a default functionality that the button has. Okay, so I'm going to have to use ARIA expanded and ARIA collapsed. We also need to learn how to use ARIA to guarantee default behavior. And why am I saying this? And actually, that's not even like a term that I heard anywhere, but I wanted to show you this example. And I said, how am I labeling this? Can anyone tell me what's the difference between this and this? I mean, this is what I'm doing is not very accessible, but okay, I'm showing you. How is this different? Again, it's probably hard to see because it's not.
I don't think it actually is, right?
No, it's not a trick question. There is a difference.
Yeah,
Hey, do it again.
What I noticed was in the nav role. Yeah, that role equal
Yes.
navigation.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
but is that actually different now?
It's a really good point. It's actually something that I learned really recent, like in the last 2 weeks. Especially because I've been testing a lot. And what I'm showing you on the right-hand side, the accessibility tree, is what you will see if you're using Chrome, and I've been using Chrome and Firefox, but I don't have a Mac. Now, back in the day, as I mentioned, we would create an element, a section with navigation role using div. Now we have the nav. But the screen reader, given different browsers, given different screen readers, there's the NVDA, which is open source. There's JAWS that's paid for. It's better. And then you have VoiceOver on Mac. Most problems, and the reason we need to add role, even though it's already implied, is because of VoiceOver in Macs. That's my understanding. So for nav, and I'm going to show, I have this. It's coming up because I'm linking that to, for a lot of the landmark, a lot of the sections that are going to be part of our every page, we need to add role. Kind of as a backup.
Karina,
Yeah.
I don't want to jump in and be started on this, but I do have a hard stop at around 5:30.
Okay.
I think that it would be awesome if we can have a part 2 of this,
Okay.
because I can tell you're so passionate about this and we want to learn about this and keep going. But like, I just know we're going to have a ton of questions and all that stuff too. So can we give
Sure.
you about 5 minutes, and then
Okay.
let's do a part 2 of this, and then we can go through the rest.
Okay. No, perfect. Actually, yeah. So you said 5 minutes. Yeah, I have a few more slides related to this, and then we're going to do accessible name some other time. And I'm also going to say that you said I could take as much time as possible, but
I did.
No. It's me. I have the habit, if I like something, if I know a lot of details, I'm just going to go a lot of often, tangents. Okay. So I just, gave you some reasons to use ARIA, but just know that the first rule of ARIA is don't use ARIA. So we should not jump to ARIA right away. And it's not going to happen today. What I'm going to, I'm going to share next time is that the assistive technologies have a better relationship with semantic HTML than with ARIA. And ARIA doesn't always guarantee the same outcome. You think that it might, but it doesn't. Again, I'm not going to go into examples because they're going to come up next. Yeah, actually, let me finish with a question, and we can talk about it, but then we'll continue the conversation next time. Can you tell me what the problem is with this link?
Doesn't it need an ARIA label telling you what it, describing what it's doing?
Exactly. It's a fancy, it's what we call, it doesn't have a name. Actually, it doesn't have an accessible name. So if I tab to this as a user that relies on a screen reader, it's going to say, because it's LinkedIn and because I noticed like with social media sites, it's going to read the path segment of the link. So this one is going to say Karina Merg link. I noticed that with Twitter, it's going to read the last. Yeah, so that's been my experience. But often it's just going to say link. So you don't know what it is. So next time we're going to talk about the how to create an accessible name when you don't have visible text. Visible text is simply the best when it comes to, because of various reasons. ARIA, depending on which ARIA you're using, turns out that ARIA label is the worst. We can use it if there's nothing else available.
Last resort. Yeah.
Yes, but something like a visually hidden class, if the CSS is done the right way. So there's a couple of ifs with the CSS piece. It's better than ARIA. But I'll keep that as a surprise for next time, okay?
Awesome. Karina, thank you for your presentation. I think that we are all like blown away, but for myself and being in the industry so long, and at Microsoft, we have full-on accessibility teams and whatnot, and you speak to me like an expert. Like you said, you went through the docs and everything, you're testing all this stuff. I'm like, holy smokes, like what you're talking about. And it's amazing. Like, I can't wait to see the rest of this, and I can't wait to see where your career takes you, because I recall that a couple months ago, you went through your boot camp, was it, or something like that, and then you came on to listen to our meetings, and it rejuvenated you to get back into development, because you had felt like things just weren't going your way. Um, is that correct, Corina? Something like
Yeah,
that?
so it wasn't like, so I've been like self-taught for the most part, and once I finished React, I applied for an apprenticeship. It was a 2-month apprenticeship with the Collab Lab, and it's been a great experience. We were like working on a smaller project than ours, and the code base already started for us. And this is where I kind of decided that I'm going to go the accessibility way, because I just thought I knew something about accessibility. And then they end up being the accessibility specialist for that team, like explaining to everyone what needs to be done,
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I felt good about myself, because I've been self-taught and you don't know where you are. Is how much you know, is it enough?
Yeah, it's that aha moment. Like, I tell many of these individuals, play around with everything until you figure out, like, hey, like, this is like something I'm really passionate about. Like, how passionate you are with accessibility. Like, I can tell that that's going to be your career, because you can go, like you said, once you're really into something, you can just keep going, going, going. And that's perfect, because when you get on the job, that's going to happen too. It's 8 to 5, but that doesn't mean it stops after 5, right? You need to continue to progress and learn, because technology is always changing. And so I'm super excited to see where your career goes, because I only see good things.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And actually, I'm really happy that, I get to do a second part, and then I'm hoping that I'll be on my computer and I can have my camera on, and, anyway, so
Awesome.
this is for the best. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Great job. All right. So next we have Chris Nowicki, or what everybody else knows, his name is Tyler.
Tyler.
And Tyler's going to talk to us about linting.
Yes. Thank you. Hello. My name is Chris Nowicki. I am going to be one of the back end engineers on this project. And Shashi said, you know what, Chris, you've been talking about linting a little bit. Why don't you do a little presentation on it? And it's great. So we're going to talk about linting and you. And no, I'm not talking about the belly button lint, that little funny stuff we find in our belly button. Learned a lot of interesting stuff about that today that I did not want to know. So we're going to just move on to the next slide here. What is linting when it comes to coding? Well, it is the process of running a program that analyzes code for errors, stylistic issues, and adherence to a coding format or that you want to be using. All right, a coding style, a coding conformance, and that can be interpreted, based on what you're developing, what group you're working with, what is important to that group, and you'll see here in a little bit that you can change it as you're going through and learning about linting and how to configure it. You can look for different things. So this will make sense here in a moment. So it's a process of running a program that analyzes code. So it's going to take a look at the code and say, hey, is there errors in this code? Are there style changes in this code? Ryan's going to talk a little bit about Prettier. And then what kind of coding is it TypeScript? Is it not TypeScript? Are we looking for certain formats of functions and whatnot? Okay. So again, it looks at different types of issues, syntax errors, looks at undefined variables. Sometimes, not all the time, but some of them, depending on what extending plugins you use, you can look at data structures, not is it the right data structure, but the best practices for the data structure that you are specifically using in your code. Stylistic errors, if there's a certain style that you're trying to use for the team, right? Maybe we all want to make sure we're using different class variables or the order of the class variables or utility classes if we're using Tailwind or whatnot. And then it recommends the best practices for optimization. So how can you make it better? What is wrong with it? What can you do to improve the code? If it's an error, sometimes it's a warning, sometimes it's an error. The other interesting thing that I found out about linting is most of the linting that I've been used to is Prettier, which, you know, hey, Ryan, I'm not going to steal your thunder. You're going to get into that. But I started looking at my Next.js logs, and a part of the build process, a lot of the linting happens during build process. And that's something that I took a little bit more look at when I was looking into this, and I was looking at deploying some of my own Next.js products. I saw that linting item come up saying, okay, linting types, linting this, making sure that it matches what needs to happen here, so that if one of your types that you're referencing in a TypeScript function, let's say, did not match or did not have a defining variable or whatnot, then it's going to not allow it to build, allowing you to go back and fix it. So really, ultimately, linting, by looking at all of these things, is going, hey, we're not going to push this to production until we know we're not going to have any errors in these areas, and thus reducing errors on the production side of the house. Two common linters. I want to talk about the most common linters when it comes to JavaScript. I did not go down some of the others, but there are ones out there for Python and Java as well. But since this project is, we're doing Next.js, if they're focused on linting for JavaScript. So we have ESLint. It is the most popular linter for JavaScript right now. It provides a framework where one can use plugins to extend a customization of rules. So you can configure the linter with different rules, different lint plugins out there for what kind of code you're looking for. Prettier code formatting that supports multiple languages. It's great for ensuring consistent code formatting, allows for extending via plugin ecosystem. And my favorite is the Tailwind CSS plugin. Ryan, not trying to steal your thunder, but Prettier actually is a linter. So that'll be a great segue for you. Sorry if I'm going fast. I know, Shashi, you have a stopping point in about, 10 minutes? No.
Like 5:40, so like 20 minutes.
Okay, so I'm just trying to not go too fast, but
Yeah.
All right. So how does this apply to our environment? We're using Next.js. So if we look at any questions on this so far, Shashi, before I move on?
None right now, but I do
Okay.
have some after.
Great. And I'm sure I'm missing some things as well, and that's okay.
worries.
We're all here to learn. All right. The ESLint, the .ESLint rc.json. What is this? If you see this in the root of your project directory, it is the configuration file for ESLint rules. So let's break this down. All right. If you were to take a look at linting, here's an example ESLint JSON file. All right. So it starts with the parser. And you don't have to necessarily have all these. You can just have an extends if you want to, but you can define specific areas. So a parser is responsible for reading source code and transforming it to a format that the linter can analyze. So based on what you're looking for in this instance, it's saying, hey, we're going to use TypeScript ESLinter, and we're going to use the parser specifically to format what you're looking through to look for TypeScript type issues, code issues, and stuff like that. It allows the linter to understand the syntax and structure of the code, enabling it to check for errors, stylistic issues, and adherence. Basically, it's a copy of just what I just talked about, right? It allows for all of that, so you can check for those items. Plugins, they're used to add additional rules, environments, and configurations, or even new syntaxes to ESLint, and allows developers to tailor linting to their specific needs. So when we take a look at this project, I definitely want to take a look at what are our specific needs. What do we need to be looking for? What is important to us in our development environment to ensure that what we push to production isn't going to break anything, right? And then we get into extends, this extends portion, which is you're telling ESLint to include and apply the rules from the specified configuration. So we're saying, all right, we're going to use ESLint recommend, which means, hey, the project is going to get, that is that is what ESLint team recommends as a good starting point. If you don't have any other where to start, if you don't have a parser or a plugin, you can start with ESLint recommend, and it's going to have their recommended rule sets that they say, here's the baseline that you could be using to start off with in your specific project. And then down there, we're adding in another extends in this example for a good starting point for the TypeScript ESLint recommended. So now we got 2 recommends, right? We got the recommended for the baseline, and then we're saying, hey, we want to get and use the recommended rules to look for the TypeScript ESLint package. Now, these packages, you do have to install the @TypeScript ESLint. You do have to install that as an NPM package, but then you can tap into it with the plugins and extents. Here's an example. If I were to have this function running in a TypeScript file and I were to run it in the console, and we're using the linters that we talked about here, right? It would give an error at the bottom. It says argument of type string is not assignable to parameter number. Why? Because if you look at the console log, we're trying to add 2 numbers together, and we put in a 5, which is a number, but we put in a 10 as a string. And up there at the top of the function, we're defining the type as a number, B number. So it's going in there as B, saying, oh, nope, that's a string. And this is where it came from. It came from TypeScript ESLint type error. 1 problem, 1 error, and 0 warnings. So it would basically say right here, hey, you got 0 warnings, but it tells you exactly what's wrong, where the issue is, and how to fix it. Okay. Do you want me to go into a demo, or do you want to go on to Ryan and I can demo later, Shashi?
Oh, no. So I just talked to Ryan. We'll push Ryan to next time with Corina doing part 2. That way you have enough time.
All right. I'm going to stop sharing this and move over to my VS Code.
Okay. Let me switch and go ahead. Share.
All right. Let me just
share your bank account and everything so we can see it.
All right. We are sharing you don't want to know what's in my bank account. Okay. Share screen. And then
We want to see those Namecheap receipts,
Namecheap. No. Pork bun.
Pork
bun. Okay.
All right.
I see it. Here we go.
All right. Let me zoom in a little bit just so it's a little bit bigger for everyone. Okay. So we're just in the root project right now of my portfolio site. Okay. I don't have any linters installed right now. So I'm going to go npm run build. Okay. And we're just going to watch Next.js build my project. Okay. There's no linters in here whatsoever. One point I want you to look at is as it creates the optimized build, which might take a second here. So just give it a second. Once we get through, you're going to see a line that pops up that says linting for types. And so this is just an example of, all right, hey, we're going in, we're linting for types. Come on, little guy. I think my Mac is all processed. I have an M1, so it shouldn't take too long here. I ran it a minute ago, and it should be fine. But
it's always when you do a live demo that something goes wrong.
Something goes wrong.
All right, while it's rolling,
there we go.
Let me ask you some
check.
questions.
Hold on, it's going. Linting and checking for validity of types.
I don't trust it. I don't trust it.
See, and it says, hey, everything's great. Your types are good. It's generating my pages. Fine. Go ahead and so basically the output of this is everything's great. Okay.
Cool.
Well, that's not necessarily true if I apply a lint to it, which we're going to go to here in a second. So ask me a question.
Okay. I think you're going to go to this anyways. I was just asking it because we got stuck. But how does somebody use the linter and allow it to kind of auto lint?
So
or
you
check for your linting.
Yes. So you can put that as part of the build process. You can even, in some instances, I know that there's VS Code plugins that you can use to lint while you're going through it right there before you actually do a specific build. A lot of the times you can do things like pre-custom hooks. For example, there's a package out there called Husky, and you can use Husky to pull in a commit, and before it commits, it's going to run through. It'll run through and lint. And if there's any errors or warnings, it's not going to let you commit until you fix those. And those are things that we can put into place into our project as well. And yeah.
So I want to. So there are some people that are against Husky.
I know.
And I think that it depends on the project and the team itself, right? But besides Husky, right, you just spoke about this. Is there a way to implement this into the build? Per se, your PR, right? You create the PR, it goes into GitHub, it's going to compile and build the scripts to build the application. Is there a way for the linter to intercept that and say, hey, your code does not meet our linting standards and it's going to fail and then you cannot merge this in, even if you get approvals?
I honestly, I'm not sure. I haven't played with linting enough to really understand that part of it. I thought it just happened at build time, and that there were some pieces that you could do in your browser. So, yeah.
Okay, I'll give you an answer. Yes, you can, and that's what we're gonna do. We do that at Microsoft right now. We have a huge set of linting rules, and if you don't have your IDE set up to auto-lint, Prettier, or catch the linting, and you push your commit up, the PR that builds will fail, and then that will tell the individual that they can't merge it at all
Yeah.
until they fix all the linting issues. And you know how you were saying that there are warnings and there are errors that you could set for linting rules. We've gone down the route of setting our linting rules to always be errors. Do you know why? Why, Shashi? Oh, thanks for asking.
Oh, why, Shashi?
If
What?
if that's a joke.
I know.
If you set it as a warning and you push it through the build, are you going to go back and fix any warnings?
No, you're
No.
gonna fix the errors to get it out, get it to production,
never,
right? Yep.
never, ever.
So-
It doesn't fail the build or anything, right? So you'll never go back and fix it. But when it's an error, you're forced to do it. So if you set all your rules to be errors, then the individual will have to conform to your coding styles and go and have to fix it.
Mm. Yeah, I think my understanding with linting was that you could definitely do what you just talked about.
Mhm.
I was also wondering if you could do GitHub. I knew that there's ways to do it before the build process. I have never done it before, except for in this
Yeah.
instance. And so I assumed, and maybe I could have put that on a slide as well, but I assumed that
Oh,
you
it's
could do a
okay.
GitHub action, or you could
Yes.
do, different things in the CI/CD pipeline to ensure, that you get the errors and it doesn't push to production, that your PR is not approved, that your PR comes back with errors, right?
Yep. Because as we onboard new developers, or if we do, right, and they don't have their system or their IDE set up with the linting plugins, they can bypass that, push their code up, and be like, "Hey, it's good." And then if they merge it in, and then you pull it in, you have these errors. You're like, "What the heck? Like my build failed and all this stuff." No. So
Yeah.
we stop that and we say, "Hey, no, we have coding standards, and these are the rules that we have set for this project, and so you need to conform to them and fix them."
Yep.
Pretty much.
Yep, I love
Cool.
it. And I'm
All right,
excited
keep
to
going.
see what we're going to. All right. So now I just switched to a new branch called Linting Example. I set it up earlier. I installed ESLint. We have the ESLint extends, just kind of their basic for Next. We're doing the Next Core Web Vitals, which is all of Next, including their Core Web Vitals that you can lint and put in there. So I'm going to go. My brain is farting doing npm run build. Thank you. Gosh, it's been a long day, man.
That's okay.
All right, so we'll go through this process here, and what you're going to see, the difference this time is it's going to go through linting types, great, but then it's going to run through the ESLint process. It's going to kick back a whole bunch of stuff. And keep in mind, in my main branch, I don't have ESLinting, and it pushed up production and runs fine.
Yeah.
But this is where we're finding a little bit more fine-grained. Let's get everything fixed. Let's make sure everything fits the standards across the board. And so I find this really interesting. I mean, I've only been in this is I've been doing side projects for a year and a half out of boot camp, and so this has been really really informative here. It'll go here in a second. There we go. Linting, checking bleeding. There we go.
Awesome.
All right, so here we can start seeing through the different errors that we see here. So, and it tells you what page, engagements, community. Obviously, I'm using apostrophes everywhere. Oh, here's a good one. Use effect, the missing dependency, scroll right. But here's what I love about this when you're in here is I can go, you know what? All right, it's a warning, which should be an error, right? And then, you know, I can go up here and it's going to pull up the component to that specific line and it's going to be underlined because the hook effect. And I can just add this in now.
Oh, you don't have GitHub Copilot. That's a great time to talk
No.
about
I
GitHub
do have
Copilot.
I do have GitHub Copilot.
You do?
Yeah.
Maybe I have a better version because mine, when you go hover that, it will tell you what's missing and it will autocomplete it for you.
Yeah, I swear. I have GitHub Copilot in here somewhere.
It's okay. You don't have to do it right now.
Yeah, it's in here.
So you
maybe I just don't use it right. I don't know.
No,
Anyway,
it should just automatically do. Okay. Anyways.
So anyway, this is in my one of my personal projects, but yeah, I added that in here. It's fixed. And then the next time I run lint, that won't be here. But that's what I like about this is I can go in here. It tells me what line, what area it's at, what components at, and then I can start, ticking through this list going, all right, let me go fix this error. Let me go fix these warnings and we're good to go.
That's funny because we were just talking about accessibility. You have 2 accessibility issues right there.
Uh-huh. I know. Which is funny because now that Karina said, oh, ARIA labels are the worst, I'm like, I just went through my entire site and added guess what I added, Karina? I just added ARIA labels. I'm like, I have 100% on my probably not now.
Y'all gonna have to have her audit it.
I will. So this is kind of my example for this piece, just to show the difference between having a linter and a non-linter with the same code. It really does pull out some information and we can customize it. Really learned a lot diving on into this because I've been using it naturally just by, all right, I'm going to use Prettier and all these things. And yes, errors pop up. I'm going to go and fix it. But now understanding that we have way more control over it is pretty cool.
Have you used the linter, testing the linter when you're coding and it underlines like items? Like if you go back to your use effect,
right here,
right?
Yep.
It did it. Like go down and then remove scroll Y.
Yeah,
like it does it right there.
Oh yeah,
like that's what the linter does. And then as you have more linting rules, it will do that for you because that's a warning. It's not red. When it's a full-on error, it will be red.
Well, and here's the interesting thing. I wasn't using a linter, so that didn't even pop up for me. So if I were to switch to my main branch, that's not going to pop up with the squiggly because I'm not using a linter. So now I want to start using the linter more. I mean, this is cool. I know it's basic. And but it's just
it's totally cool.
I love it.
This is what it's going to be really good for, and I can tell you too that when you start adding TypeScript configurations, it is gonna make it even harder to like conform your code to TypeScript standards, because what we have is I don't allow the usage of any, like the type of any, because if you're using any, what's the point of using TypeScript?
There's no point. No point. Hard agree.
It's not making your code any strong at all.
Well, that's where you get into type generics, right?
Yeah, you can do generics, or you can actually create like the interface itself, and then bring those in. Like then it becomes a much better understanding, and that also helps as you implement components and functionality deeper and deeper, right? It will tell you that you need these certain types, you're missing these props and whatnot. So linting will be very valuable. And it is, I know intentionally, Richard and Carlos, we didn't bring it up. Myself, James, and Mike was going to allow you guys to kind of fail first to understand the benefits of linting, but because Ryan and Chris brought it up, I was like, okay, well, you guys are gonna like ask for it, so we might as well have Chris talk about it, and we're going to implement it.
And we can take another level too. We can implement linting on our commits. We can allow commits not to go through, and then that's where we go. Do we start bringing in conventions like conventional commits and using commit-as-in to kind of force us into all using the same? There's a lot of things we can do and standards we can put into place, but
no, I think you went over all my questions, because like ability to stop users from pushing and all that stuff. You talked about
Mhm.
that with linting because that's going to be key. And the biggest benefit to linting is that the team's coding standards will be consistent.
Yeah.
That is the bare minimum, right? You set that standard, you cannot pass that standard.
Yep.
We're requiring these rules. If you don't meet them, you can't even merge it. And so until you meet that standard, then you can merge your PR and your commits into the branch or development branch.
Well,
And if you don't, then you better fix it because there's no way it's going to go through.
yeah.
So once we're able to put that in, then it will make our code base even more strict and strong, and that will allow that. When I first went through it, it really forced me to get better as an engineer because then, we reached 400 users, the viewers. That allows.
Wow.
I have ADHD, I think, but
Squirrel! Squirrel!
but that allows us to become better programmers by conforming to these styles and standards. It's going to allow you to write cleaner code and conform to these standards. And then as you move on to your personal projects, then you'll start writing even without using linting. You'll start
Mhm.
doing these things already.
Yeah.
And so that's awesome. Anything else, Chris? And
Nope.
any questions for Chris?
Out of curiosity, how do you set the rules for linting?
So you can set the rules for linting via the configuration file that we talked about. So that is the main place. So you can add plugins. You can add, once you add the different plugins and the different linting packages, you include that in the configuration file. And that's where, when I got to the extends portion of that file, you can say, all right, I want to use these specific rule sets out of the linting packages that we installed. So that's exactly how you do it.
I was curious too. Can anyone make changes to this config file, or is there like an owner of this that can only update the rules, or can anybody update the rules?
Shashi said that he's the owner and no one's allowed to touch. No, I'm sure. I mean, it's going to be in the root of our project because it's used during build time and used by our IDE to automatically lint while we're going. So that way it's using those rule sets as the baseline. So I think it's going to be a generic between us, like, hey, let's talk before we change it. And let's talk about what standards I think, and I don't know how this works. So Shashi, I think that's a great question for you is, do we move into a place where you're going to go, okay, here's some standards that we want, or have us look into different standards that we should be using?
Like my teaching formality with Richard, Maya, and Carlos Snow is I'm going to let you do it and fail first, and then I'll come back and help you out. That way you can research and understand like what's out there, and really go through it. Because if I provide you the answers now, then it's gonna be like it's already there, right? Like, but then because for me, like I had to set it up for my projects too. I went through like all the available commands for all ESLint and TypeScript. I went through every single one to understand what it is, turn it on and off. I'm like, oh, this does that. Oh, I don't need that. Oh, maybe we do need this. Yes, I want that, right? And that when you understand what each configuration does, because unless if you really tough love, thank you, Stephen. Unless if you really understand what it is, then you won't really know, right, why we're using it. And so like y'all will go through it and figure it out, and then come back, and then I'll be like, okay, great. Like, let me give you some suggestions, right? Have you thought about this one? Have you thought, why are you going to use that one? Tell me what the benefit is for this one or that one. This way, because as you set that standard, my brought a great point is you usually the engine, like the architects are the owners of that because they set the standard for it. But in this case, because we're all a team and we're all like on even playing field, everybody's the owner. Then you talk to it together, and then we work through it together and understand it. But if you think a certain rule is very beneficial, please fight for it. And if you think one is not, please fight for it as well. But again, there's going to be a pros and cons, right? You have to be okay with negotiating and being able to be like, okay, like, maybe this isn't good enough, or maybe this is something I'm too strict on and whatnot. Because the more strict you are, the more difficult it is to conform to the standards. it will get easier later, but trust me,
Yeah.
like the more strict you are, it's just like, oh my gosh, this, that, and my bill's not ever gonna go through. And then when you start like testing code and writing complex properties, and you have the usage of generics or any in your types, and you're like, wait, I had to go in and find the entire, all the types for this property. Like there's like 50 of them. Yeah, you have to do that.
Yeah, but wouldn't you say though, Shashi, that by doing that, by having that, as you get more familiar with the rules and everything, it makes us better coders, right? Because we're coding
100%.
we're coding to better standards. So that's what I love about this, is that we're going to start learning all the different ESLint rules as a part of this cohort.
Mhm.
And naturally our code is going to get better because we're going to start thinking strategically
Mhm.
through, oh wait, I've faced this error before. I know I needed to find this generic a little bit better, or go
Mhm.
find this and make an adjustment, my own custom interface or whatnot. So
Yeah.
yeah.
100%. It's like me code reviewing your code without doing it, right? It's doing it for me.
Is
I
there an
don't need to do it.
ESLint? Is there an npm install Sashi lint?
No, there's not. But I do have a hard stop.
All right.
And I just wanted to thank Karina and Chris for giving awesome presentations. We will do a part 2 with Karina, part 2 on accessibility, and then Ryan as well. But fantastic presentations. We had over 400 viewers in on this. A lot of our friends came. I didn't even expect like that this many people, which is amazing, to get this kind of exposure and to get this project going, because this is only the beginning. Next week we're going to have those presentations, but also next week Jaina is going to have our designs ready to go, and she's going to do a design kickoff. And so we're going to go over the designs and all that. And while we do that, I will have all of our user stories flushed out for our roadmap for our phase 1. And that way we can look at the board and understand what each individual is going to be working on. But I'm super excited on where we're going, and I think that you guys are too. I hope so.
Oh, 100%.
Awesome. Fantastic. Well, let's end this, and y'all have a good day, and on to the next one, which will probably be next week sometime. So look out for the schedule. But thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good night,
you.
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
See you.